So we'll find ourselves in this practice with our prop set up with the bolster tilted up on a pretty flat blanket at the back. And so this is the perspective in general I mentioned earlier, but what we're going to start with is approaching, turning around so that we're kneeling on the blanket that's right in front of the short end of the bolster. And you align your hands so that as they stretch open besides your bolster, and you feel kind of that floor-based sensation of your legs tilted slightly up on the blanket. I would encourage you to kind of sample what the blanket ledge feels like on your knees, whether you want to be in the front of it or towards the back, and use that to help stretch the shin. And as the shin stretches back into the top foot, start to move your spine and simply move your back from rounding to arching, breathing with each motion. So as you inhale, you're in a movement, and then it's one movement per breath. Approaching a very sane focus to start, just the motion of breathing and filtering that focus into the spine. And then let your spine find maybe some movements that are different than this kind of basic, essential, very elementary pattern that we learn. So maybe you decide to shift your hips a little to one side and feel a shoulder pull up, like you're wagging your tail. And I would also encourage you to try collectively lifting up your knees and feel the full body and how the arms and the legs kind of border the strength of your spine in downward dog, if that feels like an offering you can do in the beginning. So if I push back and I feel that flow in the muscles, which might be actually kind of rigid at first, strength-wise, and you might go back to the knees and then just feel the arch of the spine, the chest forward. And then exhale, push back and use the balls of the feet and the fingers stretching open. And then one last time for us all with a position on knees for this type of arch in the spine. And then we'll push back and we'll really take a little more of a essential draining here of the hips down through the low back into the spine, all the way to the brain. So start to scoot your feet a little forward and walk the hands back until they're no longer touching down. And either they touch the bolster or they touch your legs or above your knees. And kind of search for where sensation in your spine is draining out. So let your head maybe nod a little side to side. Feel the neck maybe circle, which is kind of fun to do when you're in a forward bend from standing, because it's just different than if you're sitting, right? You can actually circle your head, your brain turning its directions. And then noticing when you find that resting point when the cradling of the neck descends down. Even if you like to hold gently the back of your head and just give it some directional motion, but the likelihood of the back warming up, the back of the legs lifting to the sitting bones, and feel the breath shifting internally and beginning your practice. And now bending the knees, start to move your arms forward, and knowing the approach to get back to hands and knees is a unique one for each of us. So some of us will move the hands, some will move our feet back at the same time. But once you get the knees back down to the blanket, I want you to shift off the blanket and put it on top of the bolster, the back end, and then pivot your body so you're sitting in front of the bolster. Seat with the knees pointing out and the blocks under the thighs. They could be under the knees, they could be under any kind of portion of the leg, probably except your calves, I imagine. I haven't tried that in this pose, but it's nice when you get your belt on that I don't know if it changes how my knees balance, but if I put the belt around my torso and it's buckled up, looped, and then I reach it to the feet, this was why you want it pretty big, is that reach. And as you slide it down to the sacrum, well, actually it's a little below the sacrum. You're really almost like trying to tuck it in, like it's being tucked into your pants. You might not want to do that, but you kind of tuck your belt under. And then as you move your belt buckle so it's easy to get to, taking a sandbag on either your feet, or maybe you decide to put it at your rib cage, you're going to lower down. So as you find your way into a reclining shape, balancing the openness in the core chamber, feel what is essentially moving open, and then add some weight. Whether you already have the sand on your feet, that's opening up into the legs, or if you add it to your ribs, it all corresponds, right, into the different layers that you inhabit with your consciousness. That's kind of the general focus I hope for. So feeling where the sand works in balance for your ribs, if you're using that. If not, you still can access the ribs by lowering your arms and featuring the inhale. And the belly, the abdominal massage with the in-breath fills the torso. And with the exhalation, you can experience and experiment with how much lowering of the muscles and the organs that you're willing to relax into. So the idea would be full breath, exhale out of the mouth. Until you feel like that lower region of the stomach is like a spring, right? It's like a little springboard. It lifts on the in-breath as the diaphragm assists that motion. And on the out-breath, it motions down, and there's a little bit of a essential circulation spawning in the core, right, in the organs. Now there's still muscles that are working, right? Your legs are stretching. So if the blocks are feeling like they're kind of poking you, you might contour the blocks or already have gotten to that point. And you can also slide them out quite far so they're just under touching the knees, intensifying the circulation through literally through the adductors and that lymph flush. Now motion the shoulders back as if their movement of the upper bones is to gradually continue to help the front body open. So if my shoulders motion back a tiny bit with my muscles, like I'm just squeezing the bolster with them, a little bit of nudging. You can feel that with your heart rate. You can feel that with your chest muscles. Now, you can either maintain this position for the arms or lift the arms and stretch the armpit chest open to the elbows, and then reach the hands around towards the elbows overhead. So in the back space. So these spaces of lengthening in the front. If the sand seems to get in your way of creating openness, then you just remove it, right? If there's moments it feels a little bit tense to have that weight, shift the sand anytime. And then experiment with the motion of the torso all the way at the lower belly. You maintain this circulation in the lower abdomen. So that's going to be adjusting with the pace of your breath. Good. So the arms will stretch open. If you had your arms crisscrossed one way, let's go the other way so you at least get that balance in the arms. If you're not going to go with that pattern, then you let your arms be rather spontaneous, whether they're open or they're out a little farther on the floor to explore the chest and the shoulders. But reclining shapes are pretty interesting for shoulder. The mechanism of movement in the shoulder, it's generally going to feel a little safer than some of the seated crossovers we do, or putting weight into your hands and pushing back. So just noticing, some of them might feel complex to stay in. So you move away if it's feeling forceful. So as you come out with your arms and lower down, let's start to move our belt off of the leg. And as we slide the belt away, let's bring the knees to point up for a moment. Okay, so the knees stay pointed up together, well, apart, but they're both in the same direction. And lift up the right leg. And if you have that ball nearby, grab a hold. And when you lift the right thigh up, feel when the hip is in that crease, that bend. And then when you cross the right foot to the left knee, can you move the right knee away from you, like it swings open? Kind of like a book, isn't it? It just kind of swings, or a gate, you know, that's kind of falling off. The door's falling off. So as the knee swings open, you have a block or a towel or a ball on the very outer left hip. And you'll let your body lean into that ball or any of those items that you might provide for your hip to have some little lift to it. And as you lean your legs over to that left side, I want you to feel if reaching your left hand to that right knee and moving that knee across to the left side is useful to stretch your right hip. It might not be today. You might feel fine without pulling onto your knee. Your left foot is likely a little bit turned open. I'd rather have you roll on the left foot so you're getting some nice circulation through your base. But keep the spine focused on the bolster. So you're maintaining that balance and symmetry in the rib cage. For the most part, there might be a few percentages that it's shifting to the left, but it's generally balanced in the center. So feel when you hold onto the right knee, right? If you're kind of dropping into the left side with the left hip, that's okay. Feel the leg moving to the left and adjusting your right arm either besides your head, stretching and giving it some reach behind you, or letting it rest besides. Breathing, feel the lower abdomen partake in movement. And that's pretty nice to keep it simple, just the movement of the breath. Good. Relax the face. And now stretch the right hand down besides the hip. And then as you lower down, or you shift the sides, you're going to kind of get your feel, just like we did in the beginning, kind of exploring the movement of the spine. Just explore when you lift up the left leg, you lift it, and you could even stretch it straight down and bring it back in, knee lengthening down through the heel, and then bring the leg back in, but the foot off the floor. And then feel what muscles in your back you are, arching and tightening. So when I hook the left foot over to the right knee, that all kind of stops. That disturbance in my back and my flexor lets go. So notice when you go from resistance to you're kind of hooked into a supported anchor, right? You're kind of there with the support, you can stay steady. So move the ball or block to the right hip and then push it in so you have that extra balance for the hip bones and lean the body weight to the right, right? So if you kind of look down in your peripheral vision at the legs, you want to be a little careful that the left leg is not on the part of the right knee that's so bony that it will cause discomfort, right? So find where it's a little bit more of a soft or shifty space of the leg. You can find all these little parts that you can kind of pin and hold. And then when you hold onto that left knee, experiment with movement of the leg across by the use of the arm, right? It's trying to draw the leg across, and then the left arm extends maybe behind you, besides your head, or it's besides you. Okay, but feel that reach of the left arm. If not the reach, you're still feeling the circulation reaching into the left hip, I'm assuming. And not to disregard some of the challenge in the right leg, just stabilize your joint. So if there's some balancing shift you're trying to kind of tap into, work with the basic nature of the hip stretch right now. So feel how you can feature the left hip. And that's also by the reach of the left arm. Those things come together for the whole body. Okay, now for a few more moments, sense the reach of the left arm or the left leg crossing to the right, both things or one of them. And now as you start to lower your left arm and then release that resistance of the right hand to the left knee, you're going to shift the hands down and bring the knees back center, uncross, and then bring the ball or block, either one, between the knees. And let's see, if you do have a block, if you're using a block, find it at its most narrow, right? So it's the thinnest setting that it can be on between the knees. And then as you squeeze into the knees towards each other, you'll feel maybe some resistance in the upper bones to the hip bones. But I want you to maintain that for a few seconds, so about 15 seconds. So if you can maintain, it's going to be about 4 to 5 breaths the most to get to that point. But as the legs squeeze, feel the ribs move with the breath. Okay, now the shoulders might be in kind of a hyper motion. What do I do? They're kind of waiting to get instruction. So we're going to go there. So I want you to feel how your shoulders are a little bit tilted, even though you're on your back. Usually they don't necessarily pin back all the time. They like to still round even when you're on your back. So when you bring your arms overhead, straight behind you, swing them over. Okay, and as you bring your arms front besides your legs, you're going to actually start to come towards what you would consider an abdominal crunch type of sensation by lifting up your head, right, and moving your arms besides your legs. So squeeze the object, squeeze the knees towards each other, and scoot your feet forward, and then feel if you can hold your legs, and then use your arms and those shoulders to actually bring you up to sitting, and feel if you can get your upper arms to engage to get there. Okay, so we'll remove the object and we'll take our bolster and slide it so it's turned, and you're going to sit on top of the bolster with the bolster across your mat and cross the legs, so right foot forward of left, and add a sandbag to the right upper thigh. So cross legs, take a, simplify. So we'll reach our hands forward, interlace the fingers, right leg crossed in front of left. If your knees don't like to be in like this limbo, you can put a block underneath each leg if you would like. Interlace and stretch your arms up, straight upwards. Upwards is the instruction that may mean a little forwards for some of us. And for some, the interlace of the fingers might be challenged. So work with what you've got, what works ideally for you to get your armpit chest to open. And then stretch your arms behind you, open the chest, relax the grip of the hands, opening through the shoulders. And then you'll take either a belt, I would encourage a belt to be what you grasp, or your hands together, and holding that position behind your back, which is belt wide, palms towards the front, or hands together, if you so like. And your movement is now the armpit chest that was just kind of open is sort of closing in slightly, right? It's not here, right? But you still have that available flesh, but it's pointing itself back. Okay, and the shoulders are motioning back. Breathing. Sand is still setting up there on the right thigh. If you can tilt your bones a tiny bit forward with your, not your shoulders rounding as much, but your ribs setting so that you can feel yourself sitting up. And then feel around what is occurring in your upper shoulders through into the slope of the neck. And you might need to let your head tilt a tiny bit side to side, but I really encourage you to work with your arm bodies to support the sensation in the neck starting to balance. It's not always the most pleasant sensation, so not requiring to make it more difficult, but feel the arms in that pull with the belt. And relax the grip. And bring your left hand to the right leg or knee or thigh and twist to the right. But as your right hand comes back to maybe touch to a blanket, whatever's there, rather than making things perfect with your prop under your right hand, focus on the ribs turning. Really feel, now it's okay if you need to bulk up your blanket and make it so it's really good, or get a block, it's fine. But feel that circulation in the ribs. Okay, and then as you uncross, grasp a block or two. If you're not using them both under your knees, grab them both. And we're going to take the blocks to the top left corner of our space and slide the blocks to that front left corner, kitty corner. And that will access the place you just twisted into a little bit more. It's kind of an alternate rotation, right? So it's counter rotating that part of the waist into the hip, but you're certainly welcome to let your head bow down so that you're accessing your hip by lowering down the upper bones to benefit the intensity into the right thigh and the hip. Breathing. Try to get pretty steady and like a real thickness to your practice. You know, feeling where there's thickness in the muscles, kind of your visceral experience. Yeah, there's a lot that could be sought out in the practice, right? So deepening your focus or lightening it up is up to you. You can even multitask in a pose, right? Where you're pondering the experience internally. Okay, now when we move back up center, you can keep the blocks there. You'll get them in a little bit. But when you bring your hands to your legs, I want you to work your way up and take the left arm up and turn the palm back and let the arm lift to wherever it feels safe. So for some of us, it might be here, you know, a little forward that you can see easily. Some it might be a little back besides your head. But regardless, we bend the elbow and then we bring that left hand towards our back. So it's either going to be a little forward or up. And see what happens in your left side of your neck. Bring the right hand to the left elbow tip and see if you can encourage that to stretch back. Right? Knowing that when you grasp onto the elbow, the tendency is that because of the shortness of the reach, right? It's not like you have a whole lot of arm to get over there, grabbing your elbow. You'll likely pull it in towards your head. So try to encourage it to stretch back, as if there's something, as if you have a hand behind your left elbow that's pulling back. If you had an assistant, they could pull it back. Okay. Now feel the arch through the spine. Okay, I want you to let the hand go on the elbow. So bring that left hand down to your sandbag and just feel if you have a deep arch in your spine. I want you to press down to your sitting bones. Try to let the abdominal organs shift back. So you feel like you're doing a little bit of a forward bend, almost like you're pulling your belly in, but you're still trying to sit upright. And then release that left arm position. So let the arm swing down. And before you get too much into, oh, that feels kind of a little bit shifty in the arm, the flow changes. We're going to change the crossing of the legs. You just kind of sneak it. Left leg crosses in front of right. Place your sand on the left leg. Grab your belt and hold onto the belt behind you, palms facing forwards. Stretch the arms back and start to coach the arms to balance from where they just were. So you're feeling the arms stretching back. Breathing. Okay, so this side, we're going to change it up a tiny bit. We're doing all the same things, but shifting the order since your left arm is fresh off of the pose. Fresh off the pose. Okay, now can you lower the arms down as far down as they would go, right? Where you almost don't feel like you're doing the pose, like your arm position behind you is slack. So if I still hold my belt, and I try to work on my chest opening without trying to nag my shoulders and trick them. So I'm trying to work on basic essential goodness, opening, broadening at the blades, the front of the blades. Okay, now let go of the belt and bring your right arm open. So it's out to the side, so the palm face is open. Lift up that right arm straight up so the palm faces forward. And then turn your right hand back. So just the hand, so you can feel how the mobility of the arm is, technically pretty unreal, right? How you can isolate and progress and hold your ground on a part. Now, when you bend your right elbow so that the elbow is up and the hand is towards the shoulder, you can tell that getting that elbow to lift up and to actually get it to move back is only with something else. So as you put your left hand over to the right elbow, push it back. Stretch the triceps. So we're working into the meridians to the heart and the lungs. So you might feel this in your lungs a little bit deeper with the in-breath. And the out-breath. The in-breath could be significant, but the out-breath could be challenging here. Yeah, experience it for yourself. And then as you take that left hand away, this time we're going to turn to our left. So we're going to bring the right arm up, straight up, turn left, bring the right hand down to the left leg, either knee or to the sand. Reach your left hand back on maybe something. Maybe some of you have a really long arm and it touches pretty flat. But when you turn, feel that right arm kind of fresh off the pose. There might be some circulation kind of spiraling through the veins, right? You can almost feel that vein flush. So when you turn, maybe the ribs twist, maybe they resist. I think the only way you can call it a twist is if there has to be some resist to get yourself to feel like you're twisting. So when you turn the lungs, exhale the twist. Okay. Experience it for a few moments with your eyes closed. And now when you start to come back in towards the front, we turn to the right and we lower down. So we get our blocks to the right side and we shift out with those blocks kitty corner. So it's about, it's like kind of a 1, 2 o'clock to the right side. Now these seated shapes I know are kind of dense, right, into your mid body. Not always feeling like a big stretch, right? But they're very located positions in the bones to move through. So feel if it's a pretty small-ish stretch in your back, or as you let your head lower down. Any squirming is helpful, maybe sometimes rocking the boat, shifting the ribs. Okay, now we're going to get into the ribs. So we've had some exposure through these fine bones, right? Hips, triceps, different balance points. So now we come back forward with our blocks. Not that we had to have them in front to begin with, but lean a little front. Okay, now feel how the belly, the belly bottoms, right? So the low belly, below navel, that kind of is in a soft group right now. So it's going to be kind of your soft space, and eventually that's what you want to have, the softest space, right, for the abdominal organs to rest and restore. So we're just stretching around them. So as you bring your blocks out, you're going to come up and take the sand away, but really keep it close by. So as you uncross that right leg, we're going to turn to our left hip and we're going to come down for side sage on the left hip down next to the bolster. So I want you to place your blankets to the back. Yeah, and this, I'm going to try to work with it as it is. So just see if I can keep that lower blanket. It's a little bit off what I'm used to, but I'll see how it goes because it's a little higher, tiny bit higher. So as I lower down and I maybe use something on the inside of the right knee, we're progressing through the whole kind of slinky self that you are. Block overhead perhaps, sand on the side, and use that movement of the ribs to access how much oxygen, right, you get into the lungs. So the sand across or lengthwise, if your shoulder can use this lengthwise position, even let's say your shoulder's a little challenged right now and you're going to be here. You're going to let the arms stay kind of held to the sand. That can be nice. It can even be helpful if I move the arm a little bit over, but not all the way over my face. And then for some, it might be up to the block, right? And that accessibility is up to your kind of the threshold of sensation you're willing to be with. Okay, so not that we need to feel like it's uncomfortable to get somewhere with the breathing, but feeling where the side is lengthening, breathing in and feeling, right, the movement of not only the ribs, but a little bit of the walls of the chest. And the lower belly pocket, right, is relaxed. So you'll feel the strengthening mental rotation through your muscles, right? You can scan any area at any time and stay there and focus on it. And then let's let the head, our brain, really relax into the blanket. Really let the weight of your neck go. And see if you can use your arm to support the length of the side and not so much tightening through your neck to get the side to lengthen. Let the arm or the breathing in the ribs help your side, not trying to push your head back and forth. Just let it be. Just letting go, something to let go. You know, as sometimes we get into that mental track of trying and efforting to let go, lots of things in life, not just this physical practice, right? But mental too, probably more mental. But when the arm is in motion and trying to track you out of the position, I want you to feel if you can get your right arm open at all, even if it's not swinging all the way to straight, find what opens the chest. And then for me, the most important part is my right leg has to stay really safe. So for some of you, swinging the leg back works great. And for some of us, you know, it's a little bit more of a neutral zone down from my hip bone. But it's important to have my right leg in a kind of helped, it's helped out right now by the object on the inside of it. Okay, so use the breath to flow you out. So with that ribs open sensation, yeah, if the arm is kind of floating and you think it could be there for eternity, it's likely going to want to come down at some point. Okay, so if I've got sand on my ribs, I'm going to shift that away. I'll move it over and just let it drop. And then as you turn to your left, you're going to rotate and feel what kind of rotation you create. Can you put your hands on the ground, push yourself up, and then bring your right leg to the left. And then I want us to sample when we turn to face the front of the mat towards our feet. We'll bring our back on the bolster. I want you to lower down so you've got your bolster across, so it's still in the same frame it was a moment ago, but walk your feet very close in towards your seat, mindful of your knee pressure. And then when you lower back onto your blankets, if that's plenty of blanket height, if it's not, here's what usually you do is you lift your pelvis up a bit, and so that it's less pressure on your back. So do what you need to do so that your back is feeling like, wow, there's a lot of energy trickling through my back muscles. But if it's too archy, right, and your hips touch down, and that's just the progressive motion you don't want to do, that's okay, but your back might feel supple enough to go there to that much arch. The place I get a little challenged in is that if I really honestly feel the narrowing in my back is positive. So try to get your breath in the lower back of your waist, like you have these billowing lower, even though they're not, the lungs aren't down there, but you want to imagine that area opens up at the low back of the waist. So let the abdomen feel really wide, even though you're not widening it, it's just laying down. But everything's comfortable here in the core. So just feel that essential support with your arms maybe open. Maybe you're like me, kind of tracking the safetiness of it in the back. So now we spend a few moments getting the shoulder blades moving back and down, opening the heart. So feel a few moments here. Your arms could be up on the blanket, relaxing on your bones inwards. They could be outwards, but open up the heart. Really give it just that focus, just the heart. Doesn't have to be belly, ribs, breath perfection, simple. Knees could be together, hips could be slightly up off the ground. And now roll to your right. So you're coming into side sage on the right hip, and you'll use any props you might need on the inside. If you don't, you usually need one on the second knee, but you used on the first, you want to balance it out no matter what, right? Even if you didn't need it as much. So equalize the hips. Now, as I put that sand to feel my kind of equilibrium here, so we feel the ribs in the landscape with the sand, is you can feel that texture of your breath into your ribs with the sand. So I encourage you to spend the energy, even if you're not lifting your arm over the side of your head, still feel the energy of the sand on the side and going into your side sage. So settle in, let the right leg kind of scoop up towards the bolster. And the left hand is either reaching over to touch to a block, or it's resting on the sand or resting over towards the right arm. All are good. You can find something good on each of those. So as you lengthen the breath, yeah, what if your breath was your stretching tool, right? What if the breathing and the length and the exhale length as well was what you were focusing on to stretch, stretching your breath? But you can feel that essential awareness through the left side. Relax the brain. Let your head be where it's comfortable, whether you're turned a little to the right or you're on the back of your head. Breathe fully and slow. Try to slow it down. The slow down club. Okay, now with that left armpit chest kind of interested in its openness, right? So this open quality of the left arm, even if it's kind of slender overhead, you can still feel the open quality in the armpit that connects you into your chest and your visceral, core body. And that's where all that circulation, arterial flow goes back to the heart. So this will be interesting because we're going to dial this one into legs up. So we have this whole side chamber, and I think most of us have an understanding of reversing the effects of gravity to the heart, to the brain, and also the lungs. So if you can calculate this motion, we've got the left arm up. For some of us, it's a little bit lower, but we will all meet at a place where we can move our sand away for temporary business change. And when you shift to your right rib cage, see if you can, I know I left out that one piece, arm up. So you can bring your arm up towards the ceiling. Some of you probably already got there. Okay, give us feeling of rotation now. When you shift to your right rib cage, turn and take a blanket away. If your flat blanket on the bottom is not flat, make it lower and move your block to the side. You want to make that blanket really low. Now we're going to try to spin into this, spin the legs up. So you're going to lift up to sit onto your bolster. And then you actually want to lower back onto your bolster under your pelvis and bring your knees up. So you didn't do a whole lot of shift from the side sage to sitting directly upright. You basically took yourself back into an inversion. So the place that gets that big effect is your arm circulation, but you wouldn't really know it unless you were an analyst of it here. So get your hips up, get pretty high up onto that bolster. You don't need to add another bolster. There we go, stacking bolsters from middle of the room, legs up. And take that position where you feel your tailbone, well, actually, it's just not your tail, your rear is really on the other side, almost of the bolster. So you're still on top, but you do want to have quite a bit of all of your pelvis on top of that bolster, and maybe a little of your lower back for some of us. Okay, once you define that position and you can feel that leg drizzle, you're going to take a sandbag. Be sure that the lower belly is calm, even when you swing the knees into your chest and scoop up your sand with your feet. And if you can get those handles, if you've got a sandbag with some handles, you might get a feeling here of pulling down and a little bit of that resistance. And this can sometimes slide you a little bit. So once I get here, I'm going to let go of the handles, get a hold of the side of the bolster. And then as you push up, you've got to have some deluxe yoga products for that one. Sandbag with handles and bolster with handles. Okay, now you can float along a river. So flex the feet, let the brain stem feel the right amount of lift. Now, if you do feel your chin like tucking in, you feel a lot of your head kind of getting pushed up, then I'd rather have your blanket really flat. So for me, this works okay for my neck. We all have different arches and the degree of it in our neck. So some of you are probably educated with stuffing your blanket into your neck to fill up that void. But I'm going to encourage you to work with the weight of your skull back, okay? And kind of think of, some of you have done shoulder stand, things like that. Now this isn't a progression there, but where you feel the back of your skull as a support, or bridge pose for that matter. And then if you slide your hands to your neck, there is space. You have some space there. So it's not jammed and packed and flat. So then what happens is if you touch around your neck, you can kind of feel that that whole space is a little softer than if I was to jam back and push my chin down. It's pretty much a limbo space though, isn't it? Spread the arms open, cactus. And then as you get the feel of the shoulder blades back and down, be willing to open up the heart and center how your feet are responding. You might be flexing your feet. You might just let them kind of find neutral, nothing too arduous with them. They have enough to hold. Yeah, even feel how much you hold on to right now and noticing if there's an ability to soften the belly, the heart, and enter into a phase of breathing for the diaphragm, so that when you are strengthening your diaphragm on inversion, you're really entertaining a longer exhale. So it's likely going to be something you have to practice to get better at, right? It won't automatically occur. So the out breath might be 1 count longer than the in breath. But eventually you're trying to get it so it's unequal. So you have quite a few more counts on the other side on the exhale. Great, so stay with it for about another 8 to 10 breaths. Give the body time to move the blood from the extremities back to the organs. I think of this as mostly, right, a vascular pose, right? It's a vascular strengthening position. And also for the vagus nerve, for calming the nervous system, for soothing. But when you're in it, it doesn't necessarily feel like it's all peace, right? Because of the little bit of resistance you have to hold to get that internalized release. But kind of the only way to get there is to hold up a little bit of this resistance. Okay, let's pass on that for a few moments. So what I want you to try for is to bend through your legs. And when you feel them, they're going to go this direction towards your chest. You're going to take the sand and put it on the back of them. So it feels like it kind of this, it's not necessarily hamstring for everybody. Some of you might be pretty mobile in your hamstring and this doesn't feel like it stretches them. And some will feel like it's kind of a pressure on stomach, or the low back, it's a long stretch. It gets to widen and expand. So feel this one with either the knees in a full bend or the legs swing up a little bit. Try to find somewhere in between those two worlds so you have a You're trying to find your balance, your fulcrum here. So if I have my back without pushing my tailbone down, it's up and it's comfortable, but it takes trust to get there, I think. It's a little vulnerable over pose, but it takes internal trust to get your lower back to just let it lengthen. The great thing is this bolster is going to help open up that space. So it's this outside kind of support and lift. You know, shift that by moving your sand to your front leg. So you're going to stretch the left thigh straight down, put the sand on the top of that left thigh, feel the right leg bending in, and grab a belt, place it under your right foot, and flex, actually both feet, just let them both kind of push into their respective lanes, right? The left leg is moving away from you, and then you're really going to impact that bolster now with your body. You're going to kind of push into it a little bit, but use both arms, walk up the belt with the shoulders still comfortably on the floor. So flexing, well, obviously through the footing, but the left foot can relax a bit, let it be, even though you might have some thoughts about how it is. If the knee position to the ankle is pretty swervy, that's the natural structure of the bones. And then feeling when you're here, I want you to hold the belt with your left hand, turn your head to the right, and then hold the belt with the left. I was holding it with both, but hold it with now your left, open the right arm out, cross the right leg over to the left. I know the sand is going to kind of hold you in a funny spot, right? You can't completely zigzag across. So only go as far as the sand can maybe stay on your left leg, I hope. So this way you kind of kept your lower ribs all the way to the back of the pelvis, almost centered on the bolster, just for the hip. They kind of kicked into high gear. Now, before you exit the position, feel the left arm holding that right leg via the belt. Feel your head turn to the right. Okay. Now, try to get that good hold on the belt, like your foot is pushing downstream. So you're pushing downwards with the right foot into the belt, not up and across from the hip. I want you to press downwards. Actually, the farther across and down you're going, right, you're kind of going like downwards towards, well, on my mental clock, it would be like 8 o'clock or something. That's how I'm kind of visioning it. But some of us just going over and down is just fine with the leg, just not trying to hike it up. Okay, now arm stays open on the right side, and then bend the right knee and bring your head back center and your leg back up. Now, as you change sides, I want you to take the belt off first, and then bring your sand to the center. Change the leg. You might need to jab your elbows into the bolster so that you can get back into your position A. Put your sand across the top of that right thigh. And then as you get your belt under your left foot, or try to, flex both. So they're both going in their territories. One is going up and one is going down from the hip. One foot is up and one is down. Hopefully this gives you a little entertaining shift in your practice. So as you push, use the push of the foot to get your arms to lift. Maybe that's a better way to go. I didn't think of it like that. But oftentimes when I'm taught, it's get your hands higher, get them closer to the foot, go, go, go. But it's like the foot pushing is going to actually kind of adjust my shoulders a little bit. So push and try to encapsulate around the knees. So you're straightening the leg for the most part, right? You're not hyperextending. That can be more tricky when you're sitting and your thighs are straight in front of you, or out. But you likely can let that leg go through that strengthening around the kneecap. Okay, so let the right foot relax. Try to keep the left foot not relaxed. And then hold the belt together with your right hand, left arm open. Turn your head to the left and bring that left leg across. Okay, so the right foot is relaxed. The left leg is being dragged over to the right. So give you something to warm up into that we're going to explore a little bit. So feel if you can go downstream with that left leg now. So even those most seasoned in this are likely going to kind of, you kind of just go with the flow. You hope that at some point you can stop all the instructions and just get on with the program here. But lower down into that belt, so you're trying to push it downwards. Kind of like to 4 o'clock. So push into the heel, feel the belly, feel your head turn left, feel the belly move with the breath. Good. And your right arm, is likely going to feel like the shoulders on the floor easily, the elbows a little bit up, the bicep is toned. So you want to feel a little bit of strength into the core of the arm. And that would be good so that you can manipulate that strength into your upper back too. Okay, so get a feel for that left leg slightly bending. And now as you start to push into that left heel, you're going to momentum, bring your head back center, your hand holding on. And as I slide the left knee to bending, this time I'm going to slip the belt off the foot and then take the sand off your right thigh, take it away, let sand go bye-bye. Knees point in towards you. And as the thighs draw in, take a moment, both feet up, no sand, tailbone is kind of tilted upwards. This sets you into motion for a bridge pose. But, in all essence, if you were to bend your knees, put your feet on the other side of the bolster, you would be in bridge pose, but it would be massively supported bridge, which is good for us to do sometimes. But we're going to keep exploring these inversions. So now the knees are going to only go one direction for your feet, right? They're going to go forward. So as you bend, you're going to bring your knees to your chest and hands on the bolster on the end towards your ribs. Push it away and go for that press, and then feel the spine satisfied, lowering. And as it lowers so quickly, now can you start to move your feet to the bolster and then lift up your hips. Okay, in fact, I think we're going to focus in the spinal really on what we started with today, was a little bit of spine movements. So when I lift up, it's a lot into my hip flexor. So maybe move your blanket away. If you don't like to be really without that and you have a hard floor, you can always use just a tiny bit of your blanket, right? So it's kind of centered at the occiput, the back of your skull. So you have a little slender spot, but it's not going to impact your neck as much. So feel your hands on the sides of your hips and try to get them to help hold your hips in symmetry. That's the key, is symmetry. Okay, now move your elbows out and slide your spine back down. Elbows slide out and then hips come back down. So if you kind of hold the sides of your hips, so not down to your thigh band, but right up to what feels like if you were to draw your fingers in, it'd be below your navel and your belly, kind of the soft belly. So you want to get a good hold of those hips. Now, when you push down into your feet, you can feel that pelvic floor kind of interaction. Everything kind of grips, pelvic floor grips. So when you start to lift, I want you to get a feel that do your hips tilt so that your spine stretches. So it's like cat pose is what it is for your pelvis. So I want you to feel that beginning of that tilt, then lower your hands to the floor, or if you want, bring them overhead. It's up to you. You are an adult, you can decide. But When your arms are in a position, I want you to still really feel that cat spine. It's a huge deal right now. That word's not as funny anymore. Okay, so I feel the tilt in my back. I feel it, and I feel the glutes mildly firing. They're not overstressed though. But I want you to keep lifting and find a way to work with lifting your hips up in bridge pose where it's not such a tackle in your hip flexors. And then when you lower down your spine, make it an interaction of spine threading down. Find the fullness of your spine intact and then relax your weight of your pelvis into the floor. And then begin that pattern of tilting. So if you need to use your hands to your hips, use them. Tuck the tailbone under, but really work with the pelvis moving into that cat spine. I think we're gonna have to get on all fours to figure it out again because it starts to get more complicated the slower you go. Okay, now last time you track down all the way, I want you to go ahead and push your bolster forward, okay? Don't use it for bridge pose right now. Put your feet on the floor and you might use your belt around your ankles. So kind of reach up to your ankles. And as you hold onto your belt, so it's around the front of your top of your foot, right? It's just down there. I hold it with both hands. And so it's pretty free. It's not like I'm trying to get my hands as close to my feet as possible. I just find what's a natural reach. And now I try to keep my knees about hips distance, my feet parallel as I know it. And then as I pull on the belt, I want you to pull on the belt first. Draw your tailbone under so you can feel the back touching into the floor. And then carefully scoop and then lift up the hips and really pull with the hands. So that's big time important here. Pull with the hands and lift up your hips. Open up the front of the hips. Breathe. Okay, we're going to do some hip flexor opening at the final part today. We're going to do some lunge work, some really basic lunge work to open up the front of the thigh and work with that strength into our back. So I want you to just notice where you're holding onto your belt right now. And if it's actually helpful, if you want to let go, you can let go of the belt anytime. But feel if that's strengthening your back just to keep that continuous. And then as you lower down, remember, it's just a bridge pose, right? Pull, keep the pull with the hands, pull, pull, and then scoop at the very top of the spine that you can touch the floor, and then seal the deal. Feel the spine down all the way touching and tracking. And then you want to end with a feeling that the buttocks can relax and essentially the abdomen is at peace too, right? So slide the belt away and I want you to tuck your knees into your chest and hold the back of the legs. So you can bring your knees out wide and rock side to side. So feeling the back of the pelvis into the lower back. Ease across that channel. Broaden across that channel. Yeah, I know, I wish we could get that back space so it feels always eternally just like this. But we're doing some work up to that back openness. Okay, so let's do a few more motions. Stay with it. We're going to come up to all fours and notice what your back would be like if you roll to the side and then you come up this way to get to all fours, right? You're going to kind of track your blanket and you're going to round it so you're crawling. You're doing more crawling than rolling up to your seat. You don't have to do that. I can't see what everybody does, so everyone's on their own with that one. But when you come up to table, feel we're back to that bridge pose, but it's in cat pose, I guess. It's kind of fun to track this. So what you're going to need is 2 blocks and a bolster in front of you. Have your blocks to the sides. I would just put them up by the bolster so they're not in your way right now. And reach your hands on the bolster and try to let this is almost like a drawbridge too, right? With the arms. Feel what it's like in the back channel of your blades in your back of your rib cage, openness. It's like a child's pose almost. Okay. Now, for those of you that can do child's pose easily, then take it. And some of us, that's not going to be an offering in our knees. That works at all. So those that are in child's pose are going to sit back towards their feet and lower their head down. And then if that doesn't work for you, but it's almost workable, you might be able to wad up your blanket behind your knees, but you kind of have to make a pretty good size wad of it, stuff it in. And getting it back there takes a little bit of finagling. And then you could let your sitting bones lift up and be here. But the key is the head is down, your brain is down, not lifted up and pulled up on the bolster. Okay. If that doesn't work for you, then a third option would be to pull the bolster in and lift it up on your blanket, and then let your ribs touch the bolster and turn your head to the side. Okay, so that's another option if the knees do not want to push back. So let's take this pose for a few more moments for all of us. So find your child's pose of choice and let the spine track back so you can feel openness in the back of the pelvis. I know the final spinal looks a little different today than it usually has. I think we haven't done this track that I can recall. Making history here. Okay. So feeling the spine with the breath, feel the back space. If it's not something you feel in the shape, that's honest. You can notice you'd like to feel your breath all the way back there, but it may be stuck in another spot. Okay, now if you've had your head turned to both sides, give yourself some time to find that. And then come up to table. And we're going to move into forward and back motions, up dog, down dog, and then we'll do some lunge work. So you're going to reach your hips down without the bolster under your pelvis and lengthen so that the tops of the feet relax. Okay, work our way to table. And then toes under and lift up your knees and stretch the heels towards the floor. Of course, everything's towards something, but we're working our way to feel space between the knees. Okay, if they're a little bit in more, they almost look like an X, then be kind to yourself. It's work to get the inner thighs to lift up towards the seat. Okay, now feel that as you come forward now to upright push-up. Okay, bring the toes under so you stretch forward onto the tops of the toes now. Up dog, so lengthen the navel towards the throat. Be really careful here in your neck when you lift up, so you're using your arms quite a bit. If it's too much, you can always turn your fingers out, which is kind of nice to offer each time. Last time, come back to a table. And this time when you shift, I want you to take your blocks on the inside of your mat. So they're at the medium to high height, depending on your lunge. Step the right foot forward between. And as you let the left thigh stretch back, make sure you got enough room here to have a pretty good lunge. So the right, you have to move your props around likely. The left thigh stretches down, the right knee points up. And we can work here with the toes relaxed on the floor or the toes under and the knee a little bit up. But I want you to be very considerate that your knee is above your ankle, not over your right ankle in the front, over towards the top of your foot. So you can still see a foot. It hasn't disappeared. So we're going to go forward and back. So lunge to reverse lunge. Forward. Lift up a little through the chest and then lower back. So you feel the whole motion of the spine. Inhale forward. Feel the left thigh stretching, toes under, toes relaxed. And extend the tailbone back. So you have to push the floor away a little bit on the blocks. No one has to use blocks for these. If you're really long-armed and your blocks are kind of stunting your path, then you could lower the blocks to flat or go without. Okay, last time, step forward with the left foot. So you have both feet under your hips. Your tailbone feels like it's hooked back, right? You have more of a span in the low back. And then complement your brain stem here by letting it lower down, but feel your hands on top of something besides you, so that if you were needing to, you could push your hands into the blocks and let your sitting bones lift higher. But do what you can right now. So feel whether it's the knees are bending quite a bit, but you can feel this massage into the abdominal spaces. And step the right leg back and go into that alternating pattern at your own pace. So you're going to go from that lunge, and then you're going to flow the hips back. Now, I know we started the last time with a longer starting lunge. So you decide if that is something you want to stay with, a little longer into this lunge, and then proceed into the motions. So feel the toes up, feel the spine center forward, and reach through the leg strength. So feel where you have some leg repetitive motion is starting to garner you some strength. Not just in your legs, but actually through your hip flexors and then into the pelvis, which is where we're going to fine tune this at the end in 2 pigeon poses. 2 pigeon poses into a bow. Okay. To a swaddle. 2 pigeon swaddles. All right, so arch your back. And then when you go into this reverse lunge, the next set, I want you to feel how that foot flexes. And then as you mix up the motion in your pelvis, slide the left knee to point up and then walk your left foot to the right side of your mat into pigeon. So the left knee is open and the right thigh stretches back. Now you can have 2 blankets under your left seat or 1. I'm going to go kind of minimal. And as I move my blocks away, I'm going to get my bolster and place it forward so it could be here. Now, one reason I'm setting it up like this is so you can use the intensity with, if you're a little lower in your pigeon pose, when you have nothing under your hips, that's as high as a bolster. So the significant intense position for your back muscles might require you to lower down your head even more. So if this doesn't work for you, you can have your bolster in front of you under your forehead. I really like this one, and I can really let my neck have its natural curve. Relax the brain and the shoulders. And as you maintain that balance in the back of the pelvis, okay, feel what squirming offers you. If moving a little side to side is useful, or if it's pretty potent to stay right in the center. Now we're going to switch sides by staying on our hips. Okay, so when you walk your hands back into your left leg, I want you to shift into your left hip and then bring the right leg forward, cross the left leg now back behind you. Take your time so that you have enough balance under your body with your blanket. And then as you move your hips into balance, feel the right knee open. And you're in pigeon pose on side 2, which is our right leg now. And so when you get a feel here for the hip location, lower down, remember you can have your bolster under you and your upper body. You can have your bolster under your forehead. You could turn your bolster across and have your elbows on the bolster as well. And using that lift of the arms usually puts a little more intensity into the hip because you've now lifted up your upper body, and then it puts a little more weight into your hip bone. So it's a little more weight bearing, but go with what seems like, a helpful position for you in the moment, not cruel, right, for your hip. So find where there's some kind of mellowing that can occur after a few moments. Yeah, feel the balance in the navel. It should feel like it's still a pretty comfortable core, relaxing in the belly. Breathing. See if you can find the balance in the breath in this shape on the exhalation. And with both the sides stretched open and around into the knee, right? If you kind of visualize what this was doing in your hip socket, there's always more to work with. But let's come into swinging the left leg forward, and we'll take both legs just open for a moment. Stretching the bolster, tip it up. We'll take a few moments in final pose, but I want you to feel the inner legs motion. You can have your feet close to the mat. It doesn't have to be far spread out. Now, if you want to continue this for a few more moments or come into Stonehenge, right, where you make your bolster bench, it's up to you. If this feels pretty nice for you right now, stay here a little longer. Let your head tilt down slightly. And those of you that are ready, I'll show this right away, is the blocks go inside the mat as usual, mid-height, bolster tilts up on cross, and then we have our blanket. And you might swaddle so that you can slide forward, and you gotta loosen up the whole thing. Well, it doesn't work with it too closed in. And then swaddle up and lower back. And be clear that your back muscles, once you arrive in this final shape for a few moments, for about a minute and a half, you want to find that the sand could be on you, it could be on your shins, it could be on your ribs, could be besides you. But feel where the nature of the back, after all that work that it's been spun through, that it can find the circulation experiment, just experiencing circulation in its true form, just feeling your body from the experience today. And let your mind land into the breathing at the forefront of your consciousness. Inhale, filling the body, and exhale, letting go. So basic. Let the front of the hips soften, even though they're at their crease. Take a very slow motion of the belly on your next in-breath. And now feel where it gets to the peak of the inhale. Not any disruption in your lower back. Let that space feel very soft. And then as you exhale, feel the very upper back into the back of the shoulder blade center. Resting in the pelvis. And feel the pelvis as your center of gravity. And we'll keep that awareness as we start to close the practice. So feeling where the pelvis has been a real center of focus, kind of uniquely for your day, just to start it with. And so as you plant that center kind of seed to your day, move any sand off your core. If you have your legs kind of wrangled up in that blanket, you're going to shift your knees into your chest, and you could certainly keep the blanket on, doesn't have to be tossed off, but you want to feel your knees fold in towards your chest to open your lower back. And then try to keep that low back so there's a little bit of space there when you roll to your side, and you let your hands bring you up to sitting somehow on something or nothing. But you're sitting on your rounded pelvis. So with the knees pointy and the spine pointing up to your brainstem, feel where there's the natural curves. So nothing's going in any specific direction. It's kind of going everywhere, but here sometimes. So find here, find the hands, slide them up together in unity in front of your heart. And as we bow our brain down to our heart center, feel the collective, the support, others in practice, present or trying to be present. Let's breathe in together. And with exhalation, bowing into the space behind your heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you.